Alright, this is going to be another blog, continuation of the paranormal type videos I've been filming lately. And it's going to be more on the subject mostly of aliens, aka extraterrestrials, which I think is the more politically correct term. And if you see me looking over the side, it's because I have notes down. I just want to make sure that I address things that I want to address. This will be like the third or fourth time filming because I tend to ramble, and I'm going to try to stay as focused and on topic as possible. And just the FYI, if you see me doing this, it's just an e-cigarette, and I feel like vaping today, so that's what I'm doing. There's no nicotine in it, there's no drugs in it, I don't do drugs, I haven't even done alcohol, or I don't really drink, I don't do anything, so it's definitely not that. I just want to put that out there, because in these cases you really have to be clear about your state of mind and any kind of substance abuse that you might be into, because those things alter your consciousness, it's pretty much proven. So by saying that, all of the experiences that I've documented or stated, unless I indicate it, I'm completely sober when these things are happening. So that's just to give the background on that, because I don't want anybody thinking that. And I'm not saying that because certain drugs are supposedly known to open you up to other worlds, dimensions, states of mind, whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying that those might not necessarily work. I personally don't believe in them, but I've never experienced them, so I can't really say either way, nor do I really want to. I get panic attacks, which I've talked about several other times before, so any kind of mind-altering substance I have issues with and typically avoid, even alcohol and some prescription or over-the-counter medicine, so that kind of thing doesn't really appeal to me. But anyway, moving on, I wanted to talk firstly about abductees versus contactees. Now, in the past, I think I've overgeneralized, because typically I think these two are lumped together, when in reality they're a lot different. They're very different, and it's kind of just a cultural thing, just like other things are lumped together when they're not really necessarily the same. It's just easier to, I guess, address it, and then, people that aren't as educated or interested in the paranormal, it's just easier for them to reference one thing as opposed to several types of one thing. So basically, the difference between an abductee and a contactee is an abductee is, I guess, the more common, where at least they're the more outspoken and kind of focused on, but generally they're, taken aboard a craft of some sort and have experiments done on them, things of that nature. There's talk of, genetic material being taken, reproductive material being taken, whether it be sperm or the female being implanted with, a hybrid. I personally, and this is just my opinion, and I could be wrong, I'm not saying that there's no possibility that I could be, I don't believe in those abductions, at least not in the light they're being portrayed. I think, in general, extraterrestrials are, for lack of a better term, demonized. They're put in such a light where it instills fear in people, and I think there's several reasons for that. Number one, it's a means of control, and that's done by the powers that be, and you know what those powers are. And number two, in case these beings do want to come forward, it's kind of basically a means of keeping them from coming forward, because they already are seen in such a negative light that most people would not, at least initially, accept them. Because let's be honest, people in general have a lot of problems getting along with other people. So you take a race or beings or whatever you want to call it, and they're from a different planet, galaxy, dimension, whatever. You know, they're not going to be accepted with open arms. Not by everyone. Probably not by most. So it's just another reason for them not to come forward. And the reason that they don't want them to come forward is basically power. Like, they have control with what they're doing now. If they were to give into letting these beings be known, then it would force them to come out with other things, like the technology they've been suppressing and all the things in between that I'm not going to get into, because that's one area I really don't want to dabble into, and it's mainly because, and again, these are just my theories based upon what I've read. I'm not saying that this is 100% what's going on, because I think people that are so like concrete in their beliefs to the point where there's no leeway, there's no way that they can be wrong, I think they're just naive and very narrow-minded, and I'm not, but this is just my belief based upon what I've read, what I've seen, all that. And it seems like these people that come out with the same kind of concept that I do have problems that are imposed upon them from outside forces. But that sounds crazy and everything, but you know, a lot of things involving the paranormal in general sound crazy. So obviously, if you're here watching this, hopefully you are interested in these things. If you're not, you're in the wrong place. I would suggest another video, but that's just my personal belief. But anyway, a contactee is generally just someone that has contact with these beings. They're not necessarily taken aboard a craft or implanted with anything, and it's generally a more positive experience. I would classify myself, if anything, a contactee. I, again, don't really believe in the whole, at least not what is presented to the general public as the whole abduction thing. I don't buy it. I think there's a lot of misleading information, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. I do believe in disinformation. If you don't, I think that's very, again, naive, because there's a lot of reasons to keep things like this under wraps. But anyway, that's the general difference. And when I'm addressing people that have, you know, I generalize it as an abductee because that's what most people know it as. I'm really just addressing anyone that's had contact, whether it be, you know, through abduction or what they consider abduction, or just contact in general. So that is that. And then the different species of aliens. There's supposedly, I think, 53, according to people that work on the inside. At least what if they've been able to classify. There's at least 53 different species of aliens or extraterrestrials. Generally, the three most common are the Greys, which would probably be the most common. They're the kind of praying mantis looking beings with the slightly big head, and they're kind of pear-shaped, big eyes, and generally they're associated with the whole abduction thing. And then there's the Nordics, or the, and I always have a problem pronouncing this word, but Pleiadians? Pleiadians? I think that was right. They're the tall, blonde, fair-skinned. I think they generally have like blue eyes. They're very human-looking and generally more positive than the other two. And then there's the reptilians, which they're either on par with the Greys as far as their negative denotation, if not more so negative in general. Because the Greys overall seem to be pretty neutral, if anything, at least, you know, taking account what people have described and all that. They seem to be kind of neutral, like they don't really have emotions, at least not the same, or at least they don't project them the way that humans do. Whereas the reptilians seem to be very aggressive and very territorial, and according to a lot of people, the Greys actually work for the reptilians. So those are the three, and then the reptilians, the appearance are very just reptilian. They're very lizard-like, probably the least human-like of the three. They have a lot of different descriptions that I've read. Some have scales, some are brown, some are green, some are black. It just really depends on the person. Some have like the slitted eyes. They kind of look, if any of the three look the most demonic, it would probably be them. And it kind of fits the description and the characteristics out of all of them. So like the the Nordics, they would probably be like the more angelic of the three, and then the Greys are just kind of like the worker bee type. I don't really know. I've never had experiences with the reptilian, nor do I really want to. It seems like they're generally just very negative and not really interested in that. From what my brother described, if he did see any of the three, it would have been the Nordics. And then me, what the brief parts that I've seen, it seems to be it would have been a Grey. So that's that. And then going back to how extraterrestrials are put in a negative light, a lot of people, pretty much everyone, if you dabble into this field at all, know about the Fire in the Sky story. And it's this guy named Travis Walton. He was a logger along with, I think it was 5 other guys besides him. And they were, doing their job in the woods, like, late in the evening, when they came across this glowing object in the sky. And pretty much from there, the story, because, like, there is a movie done based on this, but they really twisted it around, and it just shows, like, how you can twist a story into something completely different than what it actually was. So if you're going based on the movie, you can just look it up online. It's YouTube or Google, whatever. You can see clips of the movie. And just generally, it depicts him as being taken and horrible beings standing above him. Of course, they have scowls on their faces because Greys couldn't possibly, like, look somewhat happy or even neutral. They look very just angry, like they're poking and prodding him. There's like all this tubing and stuff coming in, and he's screaming. It's just like a horrific sight. And in actuality, what happened was, and this is coming from Travis himself, he approached this light, or when they got closer, they realized it was a craft of some sort, and it was hovering pretty low to the ground. Travis decides he wants to get out and investigate closer. So he gets out, everyone's telling him to come back in, he's too fascinated by this thing that he starts approaching it. And he apparently gets too close, and the beings either were done with what they were doing, or they noticed and wanted to take off. And from what he describes, it seems that it was a part of their propulsion that had this, like, surge, and it kind of just, like, shot out, and this beam hit him. And from an outside point of view, his workers thought that it was like a defense mechanism, that the craft shot him with this laser kind of beam thing. So he goes flying and, isn't moving. They assume that it was attack, purposely done on him, so they get freaked out and they split. And eventually they did come back after arguing, and they're like, we should at least go back and see, if he's dead, what's going on. So eventually they did go back, but by the time they did, he was gone. There was no trace of him. They did a search on him, but looking everywhere, they couldn't find him or any trace of him. So from there, that's when, the movie, like, portrays all that crazy stuff happening. When in actuality, it's a lot less negative than it was portrayed. Basically, they took him up and they healed him because he was very, very critically injured because of this pulse. And, you know, it was scary, it was traumatizing, only because it was so different and so foreign. You know, these beings did not look like humans. It was a different environment. I guess he was having trouble breathing, which in and of itself is very scary. So, amongst all this, you know, he was very, you know, frightened. But it wasn't because the aliens were coming at him in a threatening manner or doing anything in particular that was necessarily negative. It was just because it was so foreign. It was just all this stuff happening. I mean, if you put yourself in his position, it would be a very traumatizing event, and there's really not much they could have done to make it any less traumatizing besides just leave him there, and then at that point he would have died. So, in actuality, they did a nice thing. They could have left him there. Instead, they took him aboard, which, you know, they had no obligation, really, because he shouldn't have been anywhere near it. Like, he really shouldn't have, and even he admitted to it. But they did. They did the right thing. They, you know, healed him and then dropped him off. I think it was like 5 days later. Meanwhile, everyone suspected these people, his coworkers, actually murdered him and buried him somewhere in the woods. And to this day, there's like debate whether or not, you know, something happened, whether or not it was like a hoax, or if, you know, the loggers got into an argument and did do something to him, but decided that they would just corroborate a story where, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of things, but the weird thing about it, and probably one of the more stranger things about it, okay, there's like a hair in my face, I need to get it away. Okay, I think I moved it, but anyway, one of the most interesting things, and the thing that kind of validates the situation, is that they did polygraphs. Not only did Travis do numerous polygraphs, all of which he's passed, but the loggers also did polygraphs. 4 out of 5 all passed, corroborating what happened as, you know, him being abducted, etc. The 5th guy refused to take the test, so his reasons of why, I don't know, but, I mean, polygraphs are generally taken, you know, in normal circumstances as proof, but for whatever reason, in this circumstance, they're really not taking it that seriously, I guess. And this was done by officials, not just like some random whatever. They were done by the government, so they're supposed to be like the most accurate, so. And then I did want to touch on screen memories, and screen memories are basically memories that are altered to be something else. Say, it's usually a traumatizing thing. So instead of remembering something as one thing, you remember it as something else that's slightly less traumatizing, and it's basically a defense mechanism by your brain to make the memory more acceptable, I guess. And an example of this would have been, if you've ever seen the movie Fourth Kind, which is also a very debated story on whether or not it was true or not. The movie, I definitely think, was way exaggerated, but most of them are. But the one thing that was based on a true story is, like, these people in Alaska, they all were having weird experiences, and when they went to the psychologist, they all had this common thing of seeing an owl in their window or in their room, but it was always an owl. And the owl, during repression or repressive therapy, ended up not being an owl. It was actually, you know, the alien, which I don't really know that I necessarily buy in repression therapy or anything like that. But screen memories are, I wouldn't say common, but I mean, they are an accepted thing, you know, not necessarily with aliens or anything, but just in general. It's just a way of your brain coping. So the reason I brought this up is because that's why I asked about the whole dream thing. It wasn't necessarily taking my dreams at face value necessarily. It was just kind of like, you know, have experiencers, that's what we'll call abductees slash contactees, experiencers, like if they've had any kind of similarities to what I'm describing. And I'm not saying it's because I'm having memories that are coming back in dreams, but they could be screen memories coming back in the form of dreams. I'm really not sure. It's just, the one dream in particular really came out of nowhere, because I know in one point I was saying that, you know, I've been having more alien dreams because I've been doing more research and whatnot on them, which is true, but when these dreams started, I wasn't doing excessive research on anything. Occasionally, I would listen to Coast in the background, but mainly they don't really have a set paranormal area that they concentrate on. It's kind of all over the place. Sometimes it'll be angels, sometimes it'll be afterlife, sometimes it'll be, you know, advanced technologies. I mean, they're all over the place. So there's really nothing to like trigger these things. They just kind of happen, and it's really weird because they seem to happen in spurts. Like there'll be spurts where, and I'm always interested in them, it's just certain times it becomes a borderline obsession type thing. And I do have obsessive qualities or behaviors, whatever you want to call them. So it's not really uncommon to me, but it's not really normal, I guess. But I'll get in these spurts where, like, I'm just, like, listening to it constantly. So usually I'll have some kind of, like, right now it's Paratopia, the guy that I said was going to send me some paranormal stuff to listen to, he did. So I have, like, just, like, a vast amount of stuff to listen to. So I've been doing that. And so far it's pretty interesting. I will do, you know, additional videos, not like a review on the show or anything, but if anything is mentioned that I find interesting, I'll bring it up, because, I mean, I've done a lot of research. It's not like I'm basing my ideas and theories all on one thing. I've read and listened to and watched many, many different shows on many, many different things, and including Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, fairies, and I'm not saying I believe in all of those things, but I'm open-minded enough to learn about it, because, you know, you never really know. I mean, people think that, I'm sure people think that I'm not all there, which, you know, I'm not what I would consider normal, but I'm not crazy. I've had other people experience what I'm experiencing along with me, so I'm definitely not, you know, hallucinating is basically what I'm getting at. But anyway, if you have any questions, comments, nice comments, or respectful comments, put them below.